Math Gad.
Oh my God, everyone, welcome to today's video in which we're going to be learning how a conditional statement is built or is formed, and how can we actually tell if this conditional statement is true or false using the truth table. So let's begin. So guys, the first thing we are going to be talking about is, of course, conditional statements. So a conditional statement is formed of two parts, right? It's going to be formed by the hypothesis, and it's going to be formed by the conclusion to that hypothesis, right? And we are going to be using this notation. So P is going to be the hypothesis, and then Q is going to be the conclusion. And we're going to have an arrow in the middle, right? So let's take a look at one example. So this statement, if you are at least 18 years old, then you can register to vote. So whatever we have after if you are 18 years old, that is going to be our hypothesis, right? And then you can register to vote. You can register to vote is going to be our conclusion, right? So we have you are at least 18 years old, then we have the arrow if we want to write it down in the notation, and then we have registering to vote as the conclusion, right? So now we're going to take a look at how to evaluate different conditional statements that have this form. So guys, again, we are going to have statements consisting of hypothesis and Q, which is the conclusion, and we're going to have that arrow, which is basically the one that is going to tell us that that conclusion corresponds to a specific hypothesis. And here on the right, we're going to see the truth table, right, for conditional statements. So as you can see, this is the table that we're going to use in order to evaluate whether or not a conditional statement is true or false. So here are the four combinations possible. The first one is in which the hypothesis is true and the conclusion is also true. That makes the overall conditional statement true. If the hypothesis is true, but the conclusion is false, that means that the conditional statement is also going to be false. If the hypothesis is false and the conclusion is true, our conditional is going to be true, so the whole statement is going to be true, and the hypothesis is false and the conclusion is also false, our conditional is going to be true. Okay, so guys, take a look at the table. So basically in the four possible forms in which a hypothesis and a conclusion can be formed, the only way in which our overall conditional statement is false is if the hypothesis is true and the conclusion is false. So you have to be very, very careful, and you have to analyze both the hypothesis and the conclusion in order to know if the overall conditional statement is either true or false. Now, guys, let's take a look at some examples in order to see if those statements, those conditional statements, are true or false. So the first one we're going to be taking a look at is the one we saw before. So if you are at least 18 years old, then you can register to vote. And I'm going to leave here on the right the truth table for reference. So the hypothesis is the first one. So if you are at least 18 years old, right? So in this case, we can assume that there's people who are at least 18 years old. So that is considered a true hypothesis. We can consider it as true. And the conclusion, you can register to vote. We know that people can vote after reaching the majority or reaching 18 years old. So we know that the conclusion is also true. Now, as we can see in the table, a true hypothesis and a true conclusion makes that the overall conditional statement is also true. So we can say that this statement is true. Now let's take a look at another one. If you live in Panama, then you live in Asia. Okay? So again, if you live in Panama, we can live in both Panama City, Florida, or Panama City, Panama the country. So if you live in Panama, that can be considered a true statement. We can take it as true. There's people who live here, right? So there's people who live in Panama. And then we have the conclusion. So then you live in Asia. So It's not true because Panama, we know that Panama is located in Central America or in the US, but it's still America. It's not in the continent of Asia. So that means that the second one, or the conclusion, is going to be false. Now, as we know, if the hypothesis is true, but the conclusion is false, we know that the overall conditional statement is false. So that means that this overall statement is going to be false. Okay? Now let's take a look at the last one, which is a very funny one, by the way. So, if you find a blue banana, then the banana is a fruit, right? So, the first one, the hypothesis, if you find a blue banana. So unless you're living in some type of avatar world where everything is blue, you can't find a blue banana. So because there is no possibility of finding a blue banana, we know that the hypothesis is false. And then the conclusion is true. The banana, we know that the banana is a fruit, right? But as we can see, the hypothesis being false and the conclusion being true, since we cannot even evaluate the hypothesis, it makes the conditional statement automatically true. So this condition is true. So basically that's it, guys. We saw 3 examples. Make sure you rewatch them and copy the truth table. That will help you for sure in understanding whether or not a conditional statement is true or false. See you guys in the next one. Bye.
Check out these other videos to improve your math skills, and make sure you click that subscribe button to make the community grow. Follow Math Gad in its social media accounts, drop a like, a comment below, and see you on the next one. Bye!